Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levi, your co-host, Shaq. And Shaq, it just went down this past Saturday, Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje, another Fight of the Year candidate. And it's nice to see Dustin the Diamond Poirier get two back-to-back main event wins, this time over the number 6 guy, Justin Gaethje, and what a fight it was.
Yeah, man, it was Fight of the Year, and we knew that was going to happen. Poirier brings it every time. Gaethje brings it every time, and shout out to both guys. Gaethje, even though, he is a punching bag, we have to thank him for putting his consciousness on the line every time for us fans because he always brings it, and all of his fights are exciting. You do have to watch him fight every single time, but I'm happy for my boy Dustin. I think he deserves that title shot. He's the most exciting fighter in the division. What's the point in fighting Eddie Alvarez again? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if they're going to run it back, maybe run it back for a title one day down the line. But at this point, I know why some people say that Dustin doesn't deserve a title shot because they feel like Tony Ferguson might. But look, Dustin Poirier has had, 20 UFC fights? He's been in the UFC since he was just a kid. Give him his title shot already. Let's see what he's got. You know what I mean?
Exactly, man. The facts are the facts. If you can name one boring Dustin Poirier fight, I'd love to know.
I can't. Maybe someone else can, but I definitely can't because I've never been bored by a Dustin Poirier fight ever, and he just keeps getting better every single time. And, people used to criticize him. Dustin Poirier can't win main events. Well, he's coming off 2 back-to-back main event wins, Shaq.
Yeah, man, he's beaten Max Holloway. He's beaten Anthony Pettis, and now we add Gaethje to the list. And, this guy, a lot of people forget, man, he upset Grisby back in the day. So this whole Dustin doesn't win big fights thing was kind of a joke.
It was a complete joke. I think people really perpetuated that headline because, he was in main events against Cub Swanson when he was 22 years old. Now he's a 29-year-old grown man.
Exactly, man. Dude's been fighting in the WEC since he was 19 years old, and he's kind of like a Jeremy Stevens case where, these guys paid their dues. They had some tough losses, some embarrassing losses, and they came back every single time, and they put their head down and they grinded and rose up. Yeah,
absolutely. And, I love the mental fortitude, the resilience that he showed in that fight because I'll tell you this right now, you get hit in the leg with a Justin Gaethje leg kick, and this isn't like, Joanna's little slap kicks against Rose last week that we were kind of laughing at. This is like Aldo and Barboza. This is serious shit. These are the kind of leg kicks where you walk around with crutches afterwards, and my boy Dustin Poirier, he showed that championship heart, that championship merit, and he got the 4th round TKO.
Yeah, man, it's so interesting because when Gaethje fought Michael Johnson, he was going to the outside leg kick. But with Poirier, he was going to the inside, and Poirier, claimed he was totally prepared for the outside version. So it was definitely impressive that he dealt with it. My boy Gaethje's probably got some of the best low kicks in the business, if not the best. Just the frequency and the volume of them. I think even though he's 1-2, I think he's going to go on to break some other guys' legs as he has in the past.
Yeah, they just got to match him up carefully now because, look, you go to 1-3 in the UFC, and you know what I'm saying? It's not going to have the same kind of appeal as it did when he first came in, because he came in as a 17-0 guy. Now he's 17-2, which is still a great record. But you go 1-3 in the UFC, and we might have to see Justin Gaethje against guys like Gilbert Burns.
Hey, man, it's the fight game, man. Things can change very fast. 18-0, now he's 18-2. But I think this guy's got the mindset to win a few fights. I'd love to see him in there, with a good 6 months off, come back and fight, one of these young guys, like maybe a Lando Venata type of matchup or a Hernandez, a Felder, towards the end of that top 15. But I think he needs to win a couple more fights. And, if he wants that James Vick smoke, like, how he was saying this week, he can get that when he comes back as well.
He was talking he spoke my boy's name all week. When you got to fight with Dustin Poirier, you don't think about anyone else but Dustin Poirier, let alone James Vick. But now, if he really wants that smoke, I spoke with Vick right after the fight. He said he's down to take that fight in August.
Yeah, man, and we know James Vick is a top 10 guy that has a hard time getting fights, and it's unfortunate because, he should be seeing some of the success that these other guys, he should be in the main events like Kevin and Edson, but I don't know, man. Things just aren't coming his way, but he just got to be patient. But hopefully Gaethje, if he wants a quick turnaround or a long layoff, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm excited to see what Gaethje does, no matter what it is, whether it's a fight like Lando, which you suggested, which we all know would be a round of the year, because as you know, man, my boy Lando Venata doesn't have the best gas tank, but in round one, he's hell on wheels. So that would be round of the year, and I would expect Gaethje to eventually drown him. Or if Gaethje wants to wait and get his head popped back a couple times by Vic in August, that works for me too. But for Dustin Poirier, I would say, listen, if they're not going to give you Tony Ferguson, sit out and wait for that title shot.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dustin, if he doesn't get the title shot, I don't think he should take the fight with Eddie. I think, look, Eddie's a great fighter, but I mean, Eddie doesn't want this fight, and now he's in a position where he might be having to beg Dustin for a fight. So, it's pointless in my opinion. I think Dustin should sit out and wait for the title shot, or if not, wait till Tony Ferguson heals up. Like Khabib said, Tony needs to take another fight because he pulled out. So if Tony wants to take another fight, Poirier's his man.
And you think that would be a war, or do you think it would be one-sided?
Tony Ferguson's one of the tough guys in the game, but I've always thought that his chin is diminishing a little bit. And, one would counter me, oh, what about Dustin's chin? I think Dustin's chin's getting better and better. Of course, he's been knocked out a couple of times, but I'm gonna say that second one was a fluke. But I think good matchup, man. If anything could happen in that lightweight division, but I definitely think Poirier's got the edge on the feet in that matchup.
So the co-main event between Alex Cowboy Oliveira versus Carlos Condit, and shout out to my boy Alex Cowboy Oliveira for cashing the 5-unit max bet. It was only 2-1, and he took the fight on short notice. He came through. Now, the definition of a max bet, Shaq, is when your worst case scenario still wins the fight. And talk about worst case scenarios, because we did not expect Carlos Condit to get takedowns against Alex Oliveira. I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, really, Alex? Like, are you serious right now? And I thought he was going to quick tap when he gave up his back, but all in all, our worst case scenario didn't even matter. He came through and he cashed the max bet.
Yeah, man, that's what happens. Max bet season, your worst case scenario should still be able to beat the guy, and our worst case scenario definitely happened and some. I mean, that first round, man, I was I was a little worried, but my boy Alex prevailed. I mean, just put it this way: Alex Oliveira wins a lot of fights. Dan, what's his UFC record?
It's like 8-3.
Yeah, so I mean, guy wins a lot of fights. Carlos Condit, I do think he could beat some guys actually, even though he's lost 4 in a row. I think he could beat some of the lower end guys. But as far as him being in that top 15, I think those days are over. And I'm interested. He's talking about Nick Diaz. Do people really want to see that fight? Like,
well, Nick Diaz ain't gonna fight ever again between you and me. So
exactly. I mean, I think Alex Oliveira is one of the most underrated guys in the division, even though he did lose to Yancy Medeiros. I thought he took Yancy very lightly. But Alex wins a lot of fights, and thanks for cashing that max bet. And we're going to be cashing more max bets.
You already know. Go to bestfightpicks.com. Use the promo code Matador, MATADOR, with a lowercase m to save 15% off any package. And, dude, shout out to the natural-born killer Carlos Condit, because even though he's on a 4-fight losing streak, I got to say, he showed up for this one, man. It didn't go his way, but he showed up in a lot better form for this fight versus Alex Oliveira than he has in recent memory against Neil Magny and Damian Maia.
Yeah, man. He definitely shocked me. Like I said, I think he could win a few fights, man.
Yeah, but when we talk about winning a few fights, we got to be very selective about how, if we're his manager, how do you pick Carlos Condit's next fight? I mean, are we talking put him in there? When you say unranked, I mean, Zaleski is unranked, right?
Oh, well, let's relax a little bit. Don't get him killed, but I'm thinking more of the the Muslim Salikhov side, or the Tim Means type of matchups. Those type of fights.
It's interesting because we mentioned a guy like Muslim Salikhov, but no one knows who the hell he is. And Carlos Condit is, a main, co-main event type fighter. And then on the other hand, you think about it from the UFC's perspective, do we want to just build up our young up-and-coming talent like Darren Till and feed Carlos Condit to him? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, they got a lot of options to work with. Santiago could use that nice signature win on his record. There's a lot of things they could do.
Santiago Pons is on to bigger and better things.
No, absolutely. But anytime you get a victory over a guy like Carlos Condit, it just elevates your career to that next level. I mean, look at Alex Oliveira getting that 50K bonus. For any other fight that went down as ugly as that one was, he ain't getting no 50K. But the fact of the matter is, he didn't just beat Carlos Condit, Shaq. He finished Carlos Condit. He took the fight on a week short notice. And for a fact now it's only going to be big fights for Alex Oliveira.
Yeah, and that's the type of fighter Alex is. And Carlos has had such a great career, man. Former UFC interim champ and the WEC champ. So he's done everything in the sport. And, I mean, if you wanted to hang him up, that would honestly be the better decision just because, But when you're making those type of show monies, man, you got to come back.
Yeah, I mean, he's got paid over six figures for that awesome fight, man. So, I can see why it's tough to hang it up. And as far as Alex Cowboy, I mean, who do you want to see him in there with next?
Man, that's a good question. Alex Oliveira, like we said, he's 9-3, 8-3 in the UFC. Maybe Alex Oliveira versus.
I got an idea. How about the winner of Zaleski versus Sean Strickland?
Or how about Alex Oliveira versus Max Griffin?
Okay, that's my boy Max Griffin weighs about 230 pounds right now, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's what happens when you beat Mike Perry in his hometown.
Yeah, and prior to that, he got a 50K bonus with Zaleski, so Max Griffin ain't hurting for cash right now. But Alex Oliveira is the kind of guy that'll fight anyone, anytime, any place, as you know. So it's going to be a big fight for him next. I wonder if they go ahead and do Matt Brown versus Carlos Condit. If they attempt to make that fight for the third time. My boy Matt Brown unfortunately pulled out both times. It's quite unfortunate how it works out. But at this point, we were kind of alluding to it on the preview show that Matt Brown versus Carlos Condit is almost like a Bellator main event. And what I mean by that is that it's a legends fight. With Bellator main events, Fedor versus Mir next week. You know what I'm saying? It's like a retired legends type fight. And that's what I see Matt Brown versus Carlos Condit as. But then again, if they want to feed Carlos to the young guys, we will keep taking advantage. And we want to thank him for an incredible career. Now, man, that middleweight featured bout between Israel Adesanya and Marvin Vettori, we'll talk about the fight itself, but can you believe one judge had the audacity to score that for Marvin Vettori?
The judging gets crazier and crazier, man. I mean, some of these things really amaze me these days. That reminded me of Kat Zingano versus Kevin Vieira. I mean, if you would have bet on Israel, I know you had a heart attack. That was a clear 2-1. I thought Israel butchered him the first 2 rounds and popped his head back and slipped and ripped him and stuffed all the takedowns, showed that, like we said on the show last week, that he does know what he's doing when it comes to stuffing takedowns and getting back up. The third round, Vettori finally got a takedown and won that round. But, I mean, if he honestly thinks he won that fight, I don't know what he's thinking.
Yeah, he didn't win shit except the third round, and winning the third round 10-9 means you lost 29-28. So, yeah, I don't see at all how anyone could score that fight for Marvin Vettori, and Marvin's on social media complaining, acting like he's like, I watched the fight 10 times, and I think I won. It's like, bro, you didn't win a goddamn thing. You won the third round. You lost the fight 29-28. Now, as far as Israel Adesanya, look, I think these kind of fights are important for young developing prospects. You can't just go in there and steamroll every single person you fight. And, let's not forget, he'd only been in there with guys like Melvin Gillard, who is not even in his weight class, guys like Rob Wilkinson, who, we bring in Rob Wilkinson to come take an L real quick and build up our prospects. This was Israel's first real MMA fight. And when I say real MMA fight, I mean Marvin Vettori is, the highest caliber opponent he's ever fought. This was an important experience for Israel Adesanya because I think moving forward, he's going to learn from that fight. He's going to come back. I see him finishing a lot of guys in the middleweight division. It's just, Marvin Vettori, like Israel was describing in the pre-fight, he's got a brick head. He looks like a Lego man. The dude's got an iron chin. He's tough to put away. So I don't really expect too many people to knock out a guy like Marvin Vettori, but I will say I was impressed with Israel Adesanya's performance.
Yeah, man, Israel's got a bright future ahead. Of course, he'll take his first L down the line, somewhat within the next year. But I think he's one of the brightest prospects in the middleweight division. And I mean, middleweight's got a lot of prospects. And Israel did call out Brad Tavares after the fight, and
slow down.
I think he needs to relax a little bit. And but he did call out Brunson, and it's funny, people would think that's a little bit too much, but people forget my boy Brunson's a first round finisher, and he can't go 3 rounds. But that fight's not going to happen anyways. I'm thinking Israel Adesanya versus maybe a Gerald Meerschaert or a Alessio Di Chirico.
Yeah, look, out of those two, I'm down with Di Chirico more because we know that they would stand and bang until one man fell. And with Meerschaert just has a way of finding that submission. So I think they'd probably keep him away from Israel for now. But look, man, Israel called out Derek Brunson. Derek Brunson has been knocked out in 2 of his last 4. So Derek Brunson runs in with his chin straight in the air. That actually has the recipe for a great fight.
Silva. He lost to Anderson Silva
in 2017. You know what I'm saying? So I think running in with your chin straight up in the air against a guy like Israel Adesanya is a recipe to get knocked out. And not to mention, I know people will talk about Derek Brunson's wrestling. I mean, when the hell was the last time he used his wrestling?
When's the last time Derek Brunson wrestled for 3 rounds?
He doesn't wrestle for 3 rounds. He's a first-round finisher, like you mentioned. He doesn't really win fights that go to decision. He's a kill-or-be-killed type guy. So I'm down with Derek Brunson versus Israel Adesanya. Why not rush him a little bit? I mean, look, let's chill out with the Brad Tavares talk because he's not going to win that one yet. Maybe down the line, but not right now. But Derek Brunson, let's see that. I'm down with that. So, any closing statements on Israel versus Marvin Vettori?
Not at all.
So, the opening bout of the main card between Michelle Waterson and Courtney Casey. Now, it's interesting because when we were watching the tape, I was watching the tape on Michelle Waterson. Immediately, I called you. I was like, Shaq, Michelle Waterson, the karate hottie. It's more like the karate frotty. You know what I'm saying? Like, she sucks, bro. I was like, we should probably fade her. But, as you know, you got to put the work in. You can't just say you need to fade someone because they suck. You got to see what the opponent, is working with. So then I watched the film on Courtney Casey, and then I call you right back 10 minutes later. I was like, let's cancel that real quick because Courtney Casey is what we like to refer to as a habitual underperformer. She's the kind of fighter that doesn't fight up to her abilities. She finds a way to lose. She's 1-5 lifetime when fights go to decision, and she's constantly flopping to her back against people that can't even wrestle. I mean, so what was the last time you saw Michelle Waterson get single legs inside the octagon besides against Courtney Casey? Never. You only see her go for head and arm throws. And when Jessica Aguilar is taking you down, I was just like, yeah, I can't have my hard-earned money on someone like Courtney Casey because, like I said on the show, man, what's she going to do to find a way to lose this time? How's she going to fuck this one up? And guess what, Shaq? She fucked this one up. And I know people are going to blame it on the judges, this, judges that. Listen, if you bet on Courtney Casey, you expected that to be a lot more dominant than it was. You thought Courtney Casey was going to go out there and absolutely steamroll Michelle Waterson. But, as you know, because you listen to Half the Battle, Courtney Casey is an underperformer, a habitual underperformer. She found every possible way to lose that fight and to fuck it up, and she didn't do the job. And Michelle Waterson outpointed her, and it is what it is, Shaq.
Yeah, I mean, she had her badly hurt, badly wobbled in the first, and instead of staying composed and picking her shots, she found a way to go to her back like she always does. I mean, guys, if you'd have watched that Jessica Aguilar fight, I mean, Aguilar was just grabbing basic single legs and dumping her every single time. It's just that Aguilar's a walking punching bag, and she was able to get that decision. And I mean, she lost to Felice 2-1. She almost wins a lot of fights. She's the Tyrion Ware of the strawweight division. She's the girl that gets robbed. You know what I'm saying? And she wins a lot of fights, but she loses, if you know what I mean. So this is the chick that gets weaseled. Waterson weaseled her out in her hometown, and like we said, I mean, she's so bad on the scorecards that she lost in her hometown. So I mean, listen to Half the Battle. Courtney Casey, I mean, who really cares? Michelle Waterson, I want to see her versus Cynthia Calvillo.
Yeah, I like that matchup as well, and then we can make the talks of fading Michelle Waterson again there. And, I'm so glad that, we put in the work because, look, you know how Fight Pass has been fucking up lately? So now you find out who really wants to win these bets because if Fight Pass ain't working, I mean, what are you supposed to do? Well, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to go to the illegal sites that you signed up to Fight Pass, so you didn't have to go through illegal sites anymore. Well, now you got to go back to the illegal sites, and if you really want to win these bets, you still got to put in that work. So we put in that work. We found out that Courtney Casey is a habitual underperformer. She's 1-5 lifetime when fights go to decision. The trend continued here. So props to Michelle Watterson for weaseling that out. Now let's see her. Let's see her versus Cynthia Calvillo. I'm down with that. Now, before we talk about these prelims, UFC Atlantic City is going down this Saturday. Edson Barboza versus Kevin Lee. Frankie Edgar versus Cub Swanson, the rematch. Going to be a hell of a card. And so far, April has been a hell of a month for us. Obviously, everyone knows about the night we had at UFC 223. Close to 7 units of profit each. Undefeated night. And then we come back here at UFC on Fox, UFC Glendale, with a max bet winner on Alex Oliveira. And it doesn't stop here, Shaq, because now at Atlantic City, we have some big opportunities. And, for a lot of people, this is the last UFC event of the month. But for us, it doesn't stop here because we got a max bet in Bellator next week, too.
Exactly, man. Atlantic City is going to be one of the next biggest night in history. I see easy money fights on the board. I hope everyone else sees them. Go ahead and hit us up in that email, bestfightpicks@gmail.com. When I say it's max bet season, Dan, what generally happens?
It's max bet season. I mean, tell us when was the last time we lost a consensus max bet? I believe the answer is never, Shaq.
Exactly, and that trend will stay the same this week in Atlantic City. I'm already seeing some frauds on this card, and they will be exposed.
As they always are. So make sure you guys go to bestfightpicks.com. Use the promo code Matador with a lowercase m to save 15% off any package. And we're happy to work with you guys. Like we said, April is a huge month. 2 events already behind us. Big results. And 2 more events because we got Atlantic City and the Bellator Max Bet next week. So can't wait to keep up these winning ways. And speaking of winning ways, Antonio Carlos Jr. defeated Tim Boesch in the very first round via rear naked choke. And, man, I got to say, this kid Carlos Jr., and I say kid, he's only 28 years old. He's really coming into his own. And you know something, Shaq? He's won 4 of his last 5 fights inside the UFC via rear naked choke, and he's won 5 of his 7 fights in the UFC via rear naked choke. He might, by the time it's all said and done, he might have the most rear naked choke finishes in UFC history.
Yeah, man, Antonio Carlos Jr. is turning the corner, like we said on the show last week. We know Tim Boesch is a Grizzly vet, but ever since Carlos Jr. lost to Dan Kelly, he said the guy that fought Dan Kelly wasn't him, and he got the issue fixed. And we between you and me, we know Dan Kelly beat his ass, but that's what happens to young fighters, man, and they have to come back. So I think Carlos Jr. should honestly be fighting Uriah Hall next. I think Uriah Hall needs to be punished for missing weight against Vitor, and I think the best punishment is to have him butchered in the octagon.
Yeah, I'm down with that. And, speaking of Dan Kelly real quick, just to get off topic for a sec, Dan Kelly's fighting Tom Breeze, and we all know Tom Breeze is going to be a heavy favorite in that fight. But here my question is Dan Kelly going to teach Tom Breeze a lesson too?
You mean fraud Breeze? I mean, I don't really. So, don't sleep on my boy Dan Kelly. It's unfortunate his last fight with Elias. Elias, landed a bunch of kicks that really didn't hurt, and he lost a decision in the air. So it's unfortunate that he got weaseled, and like we say on the show, fighting like a pussy sometimes works out.
Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. And one thing I want to say about Tom Breeze before we move on. He pulled out of a fight with Oluwale Bangbose on fight day. Need I say more?
I mean, he must have been really, really injured.
Yeah, that's all I gotta say. But look, as far as Carlos Jr., I like the matchup. I like what you're thinking, man. Him versus Uriah Hall. Get him another matchup like that. Get him another win. Keep him moving up. Keep him developing. And I really like the progress he's making at ATT. Looks like his stand-up. Look, I'm not gonna say it's on the level of his jiu-jitsu, but it's definitely improving every single time. I mean, we saw that fight with Jack Marshman when he went out there. He didn't just choke him out, Shaq. He embarrassed him on the feet first, too. With Tim Boesch, he made short work of him as well. Now it's time to take that next step up the ladder. So I'm excited to see what he does next. And as far as Tim Boesch is concerned, look, you know how it works with Tim Boesch. He'll come fight in another 6 months from now, get that 6-figure paycheck. If they put him in there with a fraud, he'll probably knock him out. If they put him in there with a young, up-and-coming prospect, he'll get choked out. So I'm still excited to see what Tim Boesch does next.
Yeah, Tim fights once a year, gets paid his 6 figures, and he's on his way.
Yeah, and I hope he has a nice hunting trip now. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to my boy Tim Boesch. And Muslim Salikov versus Ricky Rainey. Now, Muslim Salikov won via KO, but were you impressed with his performance?
I mean, he's all right. Just put it this way. His original matchup I definitely liked a lot better. Muslim, I think he is still old and on the tail end, but, he got to have a nice little front-running performance against Ricky. It was a beautiful combo, make no mistake about it. It was a stiff KO, and my boy Ricky Rainey had to learn the hard way in his UFC debut, just like Muslim did, and I'm interested to see who Muslim fights next, man. I want to see Muslim Salikov versus Danny Roberts.
Yeah, I like that, but Shaq, I want to go with the original matchup, man. I want to see Razak Al-Hassan versus Muslim Salikov. That's what Sean Shelby originally had. That's what I want to see. I know if Razak pulled out of a fight that he had to be injured, and I have big plans for that fight. I'm not going to reveal it yet, but I'm sure you know what I'm thinking. But look, man, that's the fight I want to see. Muslim Salikov versus Abdul Razak Al-Hassan. As far as Ricky Rainey is concerned, look, he took the fight on short notice. He'll get another chance in the UFC. I mean, do we put him in there with a guy like Yushin Okami? What are you thinking?
Ricky Rainey, man, he's gonna have a tough career. I feel like Shelby's probably gonna try to pawn him off as the guy they feed to all these guys, good guys coming off losses.
Carlos Condit versus Ricky Rainey.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? They're going to try to set him up. Just like, I feel like they're going to probably try to use him like Tyrion in that division, you know what I'm saying? Just have him fight all these guys that he'll probably fall up short against. But, I mean, Ricky Rainey, he's no slouch. He's still no slouch, in my opinion. If he wants an easy fight, he can fight Oliver Encamp.
Did they not cut my boy Encamp yet?
I hope not.
Because we were trying to set up Jared Gooden versus Oliver Encamp in the NFC. Give Georgia's #1 welterweight the biggest win of his career over the UFC vet, who we've been saying for a long time is a complete fraud. But if they kept Oliver Encamp in there and they want to do a loser leaves town matchup, how about Ricky Rainey versus Encamp? I'm down for it. Why not, right?
Yes, sir.
So, flyweight matchup between John Moraga and Wilson Hayes. Now, before we talk about the fight itself, how did you score this fight, Shaq?
I scored it 2-1. The thing is, when I score fights, I score it on the way I feel like it's gonna be scored. Like, I scored my personal way. I had it 2-1 Moraga, but I'm just gonna say Moraga was very fortunate to win that decision. He's lucky the fight wasn't in Vegas, but props to John Moraga. All that matters is getting your hand raised, and he got redemption in his hometown. But he did exactly what we were afraid of, Dan.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he got taken out, 8 to 10 times. He went to his back a million times throughout the fight, but he still found a way to win. He landed the hardest shots on the feet. And shout out to Wilson Hayes, because he came to fight. A lot of people weren't aware, and I wasn't aware either, but I found out during the broadcast that, his brother was unfortunately killed earlier this year. And, Wilson was fighting with a very heavy heart, and you could see that, man, just throughout the walkout, throughout the fight itself. The way Wilson was fighting, he had a lot of fire in there. He really wanted that win. So, hats off to Wilson Hayes, man, because he came to fight for sure. I think John Moraga definitely won the first round. I think Wilson Hayes definitely won the third round. It all comes down to how you scored that second round. I feel like John Moraga slightly edged it out. So I agree with the 29-28. And, man, John Moraga goes from being on a 3-fight losing streak. Now he's on a 3-fight winning streak. How quickly things can change.
See, I thought it was the other way around. I thought the first round was the round that was in question and that Moraga clearly won the second round.
Yeah, but either way, we both had a 29-28. And how about the career turnaround for Chicano John?
Yeah, from 3 L's in a row to 3 wins in a row, and he called out Sergio after the fight.
Relax, kid.
I think he needs to relax. What I really want to see is I want to see Moraga fight one of these young guys. I mean, his 3 losses were to young guys like Sergio and Mateus Nicolau, and we already know what would happen if they ran that back. So I'm thinking he should fight the next young guy. And how about my boy Davison Figueiredo?
Ooh, I like that a lot. Wasn't there someone we wanted to feed to Davison to get a quick win real quick? I don't even remember.
Dustin Ortiz?
Oh, yeah, that would be a nice win for Davison. But we all know Dustin's trying to avoid that one at all costs because he doesn't think he could dry hump Davison. So, yeah, I'm down with John Moraga versus Davison. But what I was thinking, man, how about you put the two hardest hitters in the flyweight division against each other? And what I'm talking about is, what about John Moraga versus Ryan Benoit? I mean, wouldn't that be a good old-fashioned slugfest?
It would be two hardest hitters in the division, and even though my boy Benoit in the skill department might be lacking across the board, he's definitely not lacking when it comes to power.
I'll just say this: one of them knocked out my boy Serge.
Exactly. One of them knocked out Sergio Stiff.
So yeah, I'm thinking Moraga versus Benoit. That would be a hell of a matchup. So I hope they make that. And middleweight division: Brad Tavares versus Krzysztof Jotko. Man, Brad Tavares. He got his.
I've been saying for a long time, Brad's serious. Look, I know he had a little bad stretch when he got knocked out by Bosch and Rob, but look, man, he took his time off. He came back, and I mean, honestly, in my opinion, he ain't lost a round since he's been back.
Yeah, he's been looking the best he's ever looked. You know, that was his first knockout since he put away Phil Baroni on the Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard card a long-ass time ago. And to put away a guy like Krzysztof Jotko, I mean, it says a lot. And, man, Krzysztof, you know, from going 19-1, you know, and we were hyping this guy up because, look, you have a 19-1 record. I mean, that means you find a way to win. That means you are a consistent winner. That means you're someone to look out for. Now he's 19-4, Shaq. Now he's lost 3 fights in a row, his last 2 by knockout, and it's just crazy how unforgiving the fight game truly is. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. Some guys just get the short end of the stick, and that's what's been happening for Jotko lately.
Yeah, man, it's crazy how the line went from -215 to plus money on Fight Time. Pretty much everyone went against Brad, and I mean, it was kind of hard to understand why, but you know, Brad Tavares, it was a clear setup on Shogi's move. I mean, it was pretty evident that he was mad about Krzysztof losing to Uriah Hall. And he gave him Brad. And Krzysztof, man, it's unfortunate because, like you said, he was at one point. This guy was plus 200 against Tamden McCrory at the time. And Tamden was the hottest thing in the middleweight division. And Krzysztof knocked him out stiff. And he just seems to haven't – he kind of abandoned his game, man. He got away from what made him good. And it's sad that he adopted this new style, but I don't know if he gets cut. It wouldn't shock me if he was in KSW in a few months. And but if he doesn't get cut, man, who should he fight?
Let me ask you this: you think at this point Krzysztof could, you know, beat someone like Elias who completely avoids the fight?
I'm not convinced, bro. Like, and I haven't been convinced since the Dave Branch fight. Like, the Dave Branch fight really worried me because it was like I thought we were going to, you know, butcher Branch on the feet. And, like, Branch was, like, jabbing us, and it was 50-50. It really worried me. So, you know, I don't know. I've just been seeing steady decline. He's looked worse and worse and worse in each of these 3 fights. And it wouldn't shock me if he was in KSW.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I mean, it's just I don't understand why he abandoned that footwork that, you know, we used to say, man, that Jotko footwork, and then we saw a guy like Jack Hermanson come out with that same style, and it's really effective. I don't know why Jotko abandoned it, but look, man, all the credit goes to Brad Tavares. I thought there was going to be a speed difference in this fight. I thought Krzysztof was going to be able to run circles around Brad. Brad completely shut that down. Obviously, we know about the leg kicks of Brad Tavares, but look, man, the way he set up that right hand, his killer instinct, he put him away, and man, we got to give Brad Tavares a big fight next. Look, I know he called out Michael Bisping, but as you and I know, Shaq, Bisping ain't going to take that fight. Bisping is only interested in, you know, legendary type fights. So what do you think's next for Brad Tavares?
I mean, we were talking about Brunson earlier, man. I think that's a good matchup. I think that's a great matchup for Brad. And I've always thought that Chris Weidman was a good matchup for Brad as well. I think those are favorable matchups for him. And, you know, people would say I'm crazy for saying that, but I truly believe that. I think Brad is top 10, and I think he's a bad matchup for a lot of guys because Brad really doesn't have any weaknesses.
I like that Weidman versus Brad Tavares match, man, because, look, we know Brad Tavares' takedown defense is on point. When guys have beat Brad Tavares in the past, you know, besides the Aaron Simpson fight or the Yoel fight, it's been by knockout, and we know Chris Weidman holds one of the most legendary knockouts in UFC history when he went out there and knocked out Anderson Silva at UFC 162, and Chris was also recently on a 3-fight skid. He rebounded with a win over Kelvin Gastelum. So both guys coming off wins, both guys coming off finishes. I believe both guys coming off third-round finishes. I'm into it. Sign me up. Brad Tavares versus Chris Weidman. May the best man win. I'd be very curious where they line that fight as well.
Yes, sir.
Now, Fight Pass prelims. Gilbert Durinho Burns versus Dan Murray. And look, man, Gilbert Burns, now he's coming off 2 straight KO wins. And, people are talking about how, oh, he's this striker now and this and that. And it's like, look, man, he beat 2 guys that, and no, not to discredit his wins, because he has been getting better. But if you think he's going to go out there and knock out someone in the top 15, you've lost your damn mind.
We are going to discredit his wins.
Go ahead.
And look, he did his thing. He's out there front running these last 2 fights, and if he really thinks he wants this OAM smoke, he can come and get it. But OAM's on the bigger and better things. OAM's in that top 15 now, and look, I mean, he fought Moret, who's got 3 losses, and he beat Jason Sago. Like, What else has he done? He did beat Alex Cowboy, but let's see Gilbert Burns in a real fight, man. Let's see Gilbert Burns in there versus a James Krause or a who else is coming off a win?
My boy Leo Santos just got matched up with Nick Lentz, right?
And that's going to be a good fight, and I'm glad to see my boy Leo's back in that cage. Nick Lentz wins a lot of fights, so it's going to be a good fight.
Leo Santos is an uncrowned top 15 guy.
It's actually kind of disgusting about the top 15 right now, by the way.
Felder's on there, but the guy that finished him, Trinaldo, isn't? Like, what?
You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of disgusting. But Gilbert Burns, he's out there front running. But props to him. He's going out there and performing like a minus 630. Like a minus 630 should, by knocking his opponent stiff. But I think he needs a real fight next to truly see where he is, because don't forget, every time this guy has a real back and forth war, he kind of falls.
Yeah, 100%. That's why I'm trying to see him in there with someone serious. And look, OAM doesn't need to take that fight because Gil already pulled out the fight once before on fight week. So I can see OAM being like, yeah, I'm beyond that. I just knocked out Evan Dunham. I'm good. But what about my boy Alex Hernandez? Coming off that knockout win over Beneil Dariush, I understand that's way beyond where Gilbert is, but still, he's only 1-0 in the UFC. Why not build him up and get him another win? Let's see Alex Hernandez versus Gilbert Durinho Burns. I think that'd be a great matchup.
Yeah, that's a good fight as well. And Gilbert was also supposed to fight Lando. They could do that as well.
Yeah, no, I like that Lando matchup too. It's just interesting because we know the deal with Lando. It's first round finish or bust. So, first round would be a war, but if Gilbert somehow survived, I think Gilbert would come back and win that fight. I wish Lando could get those cardio issues in check, because if he does, he's a very dangerous guy. Now, we don't have to talk about Mueller versus Dobson or Okami versus Lima, but what I do want to talk about is Adam Wejciech versus Arjan Bueller. Now, real quick, Shaq, this line opened minus 150 Arjan Bueller for a reason, because, it was a close matchup on paper, and then it got steamed to minus 400 Arjan Bueller. What's the guy done to deserve a minus 400 next to his name against Adam Wejciech? Now people are calling it a fluke. Did you know that 6 of 9 of Adam Wejciech's wins are via submission off his back, Shaq?
Yeah, man, he does. It's definitely not a fluke. I definitely thought Arjan would get the win. Just thought it was going to be more physical, and I thought he was going to build a lead on points just due to, Adam's style of flopping to the back. And, pulling off those subs is very hard to do, but it was definitely no fluke, because that's what Adam does. I mean, Adam on the local scene goes to his back and he submits guys. So that's what he does. I think Arjan's the better fighter, but, my boy Adam is a opportunist, and that's what he does. If you go in his guard, he's like one of these Manny Bermudez guys. You know what I'm saying? He's got a gimmick, and he beats a lot of guys with his gimmick. Yeah,
100%. And, that was the first Omoplata in heavyweight history, the second Omoplata in UFC history. First one belongs to Ben Saunders. And look, if you bet on Arjan Bueller and you're surprised or you're calling this a fluke, you didn't put the work in, because if you put the work in, you would have known Adams won 6 of his 9 wins via submission, most of those off his back. So why would you be surprised when over 66% of his wins are via sub that he won via sub again Saturday night?
Yeah.
That's just my opinion, and it opened minus 150 for a reason, got steamed to minus 400. Why? Because DC said that he's a good wrestler. You're going to let that kind of hype train affect you? The guy beat Luis KLB Henrique, and now he's minus 450? Like, that's what you call a hype train, Shaq.
It reminds me of when they said Henan Barra was training at ATT for the Keller. Okay. And? So?
Yeah, it's a complete joke, but they got to learn their lessons somehow. And speaking of learning lessons, how many times are they going to count out my boy Alejandro Perez? I mean, look, as far as I'm concerned, he's 7-1 in the UFC. Officially, he's 6-1-1 with the one draw. And, man, he didn't just go out there and beat a top 15 guy in Matthew Lopez. He went out there and finished Matthew Lopez in under 2.5 rounds.
There was definitely no weaseling going on this time. My boy Alejandro's the Mexican finisher now. You know what I'm saying? So, but make no mistake about it, he will weasel, and he just trust me about it. He's still got some more weasel performances in his tank. And I mean, guys, how long have we been saying keep an eye out for Alejandro Perez? We've been saying for how long, Dan? This guy wins a lot of fights. His only loss is a fluke, if we're being honest. And I mean, the guy's really. Let's just act like he's undefeated in the UFC. I know Patrick Williams finished him, but let's just act like that didn't happen, guys.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I mean, like, bro, he wins pretty much every fight. This guy is the type of guy that gets dropped twice in rounds and still wins that round. He knows how to get every round back. The first round was a little rough. We knew Lopez hits hard. He's explosive, solid wrestler. But like we said on the show, his cardio is in question. I mean, he came out in that second round, and I mean, right away, we could tell that fight was over and that Alejandro was going to be able to at least keep his distance and just pick him off.
People really underestimate how high the talent level was on that first season of Tough Latino America. I mean, look at the guys it produced. Alejandro Perez versus Jose Teco Quinones in the finals. I'm talking about guys like Yair Rodriguez, guys like Gabriel Benitez. All these guys I'm mentioning, most of them at least, are top 15 guys now. So that season of The Ultimate Fighter produced some high-level talent. And now you see Alejandro and Teco Quinones, the two guys that fought in the finals of that season, their UFC careers are prospering.
I mean, yeah, man. You know how much MMA means to the country of Mexico. I mean, when they made it to the finals, they were fighting each other, but they were hugging each other and crying because they made it. They made it all the way from the local scene to the UFC, and now look at them.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, and we also made a comment. Shout out to Matthew Lopez; he's a good fighter. But we made a comment on the show, like, how is this kid top 15? Because he beat Mitch Gagnon and Johnny Eduardo. If you haven't figured out how to beat Mitch Gagnon and Johnny Eduardo, I don't know what to say, Shaq.
And the facts are just the facts.
Yeah, and it is what it is. So I'm really looking forward to Alejandro's next fight. And speaking of the weaseling, because he did get a finish this time. Look, you start to gas out on a guy like Alejandro Perez. Don't be surprised when he turns up. I mean, they call him Turbo for a reason. So don't be surprised when he puts you away. But if you do have the cardio the last 3 rounds with a guy like Alejandro Perez, he's going to win that decision, Shaq.
Oh, yeah, and you will be upset about the decision. You will think you have won. It will be labeled as a robbery, and Alejandro will get his hand raised.
So, look, what's next for Alejandro? I know he called out Eddie Wineland. I was kind of wanting to see my boy Tomas Almeida get back on track and get that Eddie Wineland fight. But if it were up to you, Shaq Shelby, who you got next for Alejandro?
Man, my boy Alejandro keeps winning. He definitely deserves his chance at the top 15. Who's available in that top 15?
That's a great question. That's something that I'm going to look up right now as we're recording this, because there's so many opportunities. And as I look at the rankings, we see a guy like John Dodson. And between you and me, we know John Dodson wouldn't take that fight because, John Dodson likes to pick his fights.
How about Alejandro Perez versus Pedro Munoz?
Sounds like a hell of a fight to me. That would be a serious battle.
They can do it in Mexico or Brazil. And,
May the best man win. I love both those guys, so I'd definitely love to see them go to war and see who the best man is. And, yeah, great matchup. So, the curtain jerker, Luke Sanders versus Pat Williams. And, we got this one wrong. I thought for a fact, this one's going to end under 1.5. There's no way this fight goes the distance. And, both men got dropped. Both men wobbled. But somehow they both survived and it went to the final horn. And, I got to say, very underwhelming performance by Luke Sanders. A little bit better performance by Pat Williams. He was able to go the 3-round distance. That was the last fight on Luke Sanders' contract. And as you know, my boy Patty Ice has lost, a million fights in a row now. So you think either of these guys see that next UFC call again?
I don't think so, man. I think, it's unfortunate that we lost that bet, but I thought Patrick, even though I still think he's one of the worst fighters on the roster, he actually did make a couple improvements, I guess. But Luke Sanders, man, like, bro, who really cares? Like, you're 2-2 in the UFC. You lost to Andre Sukumtach. I mean, he can win a couple fights here and there, but he's going to be a 500 fighter. I mean, I don't see what's the point to, committing like a big deal to him or anything.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It was a bust. It was what it was. Came into the UFC with a great record. Everyone was hyping him up, and turns out he's a fraud.
I mean, he lost to Andre Sukumtach.
Yeah, that's all I got to say. But if they do keep him, let's see Luke Sanders versus Albert Morales. You know what I'm saying?
Who you got in that fight?
Albert the Warrior Morales. You know what I'm saying?
How about Luke Sanders versus Benito Lopez?
Yeah, exactly. Get Benito a nice little second UFC win in there and get him back on track, 2 in a row. I'm down with that as well. And I think this is the last of my boy Patty Ice.
Yeah, Pat, I don't think fighting's his first job in life. Yeah,
and it is what it is. Well, Shaq, it was good to recap, UFC Glendale, Poirier versus Gaethje, amazing card. But, the grind doesn't stop now because these odds for UFC Atlantic City, they're going to drop in the next day or two. We got a big card ahead of us. UFC Atlantic City, it's going down this Saturday. Lots of opportunities. And we're going to close out the month in style. Like we already mentioned, 2-0 on events in April already. About to make it 3-0, plus the Bellator Max Bet next week. They got to go to bestfightpicks.com. They got to use the promo code Matador to save 15% off any package. And let's cash these fucking bets, Shaq.
Yeah, man. Easy money. There's nothing better than being out, getting the play from Dan and Shaq, looking back and seeing easy money in your 5 Dimes account or your Bovada account, whatever account you use. We get the job done. When I say it's max bet season, it's going to win. Pull out your money and lay it down. I had some clients put big money on Alex Cowboy this weekend because they trust me.
Big money.
I'm talking big money. Money that was making me sweat before the fight. You know what I'm saying? But when my worst case scenario still beats you, that's when it's a max bet, and that's why we win all the time.
100%. No one does it better than us long term. The facts are the facts. Go look up our records. Bet MMA tips, Cap Protect. You already know what to do. You already know the deal. Go to bestfightpicks.com. Sign up right now. Use the promo code Matador. Save 15% off any package. We will see you in the winner's circle. Make sure you subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Stitcher. Follow me at Best Fight Picks. Follow Shaq at MMA Genius 05. Follow our Instagram at Best Fight Picks Official. Shaq, any message for them before we talk in a couple days?
Sign up, bestfightpicks@gmail.com. And we'll get the job done for you this weekend, guaranteed.
Absolutely. And it's just the winning ways will continue. I'm very, very excited. We will have our UFC Atlantic City breakdown up in the next few days, so make sure you stick around for that. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.